reason it's very difficult for those guys to do what we've done is it's an open source business model. So they can't go and completely rebuild their application and re-release it because the cost implications of doing that, they don't have any commercial model around why they would do that. So, someone like Drupal, the guy who built it originally, they make all their money on services and support revenue around it. So the one thing about open source is, and we say it again, is someone has to make some money somewhere to do it. And what those guys do is their business model, which we looked at about 3 or 4 years ago, is they get mass audience using the platform, then they load service and support revenues around it. But for them to go in and, because they use a source out model, so we haven't seen, there's one CMS in Germany that's a commercial framework as well that does it similar to us. They don't have all the translation hookings, but they do the underlying architecture the same. No one else we've seen. I mean, there's the guys, it's a Trados, or SDL that owns Trados board company called Tridium about 3 years ago and paid about 100 million euros for it, I think. They specialise in multi-language as well, but again, they're a download, install, big commercial application. You're talking about 100 grand per licence fees. And we used to charge about 20-25 grand to download and install Shadow, but we just completely dumped it. For big corporate clients, they can still do that, but anybody else has to go on demand. And literally the pricing is around, it starts at about $50 a month and scales up to a couple hundred. So it's not too expensive. So it's but there's open source platforms out there, but we haven't seen any of them that do multi-language that well.
One question about the translation part.
Yeah.
You send the notification to the translator or translation company, and then they log on to this system.
Yep.
And then they'll do the job there.
Yep.
Suppose if they don't, what's going to happen? Do you have those control over the how the job?
So what happens if they don't do it? If
Yeah.
it stays? Yeah. So what happens is that you've got a project owner, so someone who not necessarily has created content, but is responsible for the content in that part of the site, that language version. So what they have is a little dashboard if they have a log in that shows them jobs that are still awaiting to be published for the areas they're responsible for. So they basically, you've got I think it's enabled on here. I don't think it is. You don't have a dashboard running on here. But your dashboard, so when you log in, so you're the owner of the product area for the Chinese version, you just logged in, you'll have a pod that will show you all the translation jobs that are in your area that haven't been completed yet. And so you can go in there and see how old they are and whether someone's doing anything.
So the owner of this content.
It doesn't necessarily be, it can be the content owner, so the content owner can be the person who created it, or it can just be because what you tend to find is companies will have like a marketing person who's responsible for that website in that language format. So they're the guys who are tracking that content's been updated and published.
So that person will be the project manager.
Basically, yeah. We try and give the flexibility so you can either define on a section. You can define, if you want to get tricky, you can define who the owner of that section is. So you go in and assign that. And then you can also do things if you want to, like add in more work notifications. So this is really useful. This is where it becomes a lot of our bigger clients will use that for legal documentation. So it still won't go live until the legal department has come in or they're aware if someone's changed. So financial services have major issues with disclaimers on everything all the time. They're using the system so that once the translation's been done, a legal person still has to go in and authorise it and approve it before it actually goes live because they need someone. So the trick with whatever system you're looking at in multi-language, the trick is you need flexibility. If it locks you into using particular services for different pieces of content or different language pairs, then it'll break. You need the flexibility to define the different environments. The downside is that it's a bit of work at the start to set up your translation workflows. It does take it's a bit of work. We've played around with wizards and things, but we haven't cracked that yet. So workflow
Okay.
process. Yeah, we tried doing wizards, but it just breaks. It's not flexible enough.
And when you actually go to publish your website, do you actually host the website, or?
We do. So what we do is we actually have. So what we've done is so this site and all these sites are running in the cloud. So what you've got is so if you want to create a new site, you have an account and you can have as many sites as you want associated. This was one of the major pillars that we had to crack to execute the business strategy that we've got. We had to make it simple, cheap and fast for people to build new sites. So so what you do is we've got two server farms running on the Amazon EC2 cloud. So you can go in and you can say, look, I want to call this AGIS 2, and you can pick your region. So at the moment we've got server farms on the cloud, virtual server environments in the US and Europe, and we'll set up in Singapore and Korea fairly shortly. And all we do is run a cluster environment, so we can run about 200 sites per virtual instance, depending on the size of the sites. And for us, the really important thing and the reason we had to use the cloud is one of your because we used to host for clients all the time, and your nightmare with clients and hosting is when a server collapses and you're using a hosting provider in the US and you've got to ring them up and you've got to get a new server in there and it takes them a day to order it and it's a nightmare. So what we do here is every half day or a day, depending on what clients want to do, we snapshot it, store it on the storage, EC2 storage back end. Costs you about 10 cents per 100 gig, so nothing. And if a virtual server collapses, we just go back to the most recent backup and restore it in about 15 seconds. So if you wanted to create a site, you literally go in, hit create site. What that's doing is creating you a whole new instance of Shadow, database layer, the whole lot. It'll tell you it's been created. In a few minutes it'll refresh the page and it's there. So, and then your job basically is you have to come in and build your templates. So build your templates, integrate them into Shadow, and that's it. Everything else is set up for you.
And what type of URL would that generate for you? Would it be?
It just generates a generic one, but you just have to map your domain through. So if you've got your domain, it's about a 2-minute job to basically. It's just a mapping done at the server level. You just map the domain straight through to the instance that you're hosting on.
So you can choose your domain name.
Yep, you can, and so that's the other thing that's really important, particularly if you're looking to search, is we generate, and whatever product you look at, you have to generate search engine friendly URLs. It's one of the big upsides that you get, and SEO is a whole different kettle of fish, but companies are getting major benefits in. So if you're VeriSign and you say you're ranking 50th on new domain in English, put your site in Spanish, someone hits it from Google Spain, same keyword, and I'll rank 2 or 3 because there's a much lower pool of people competing for the same. And the big one is there's a lot less people that have structured their site properly, so Google crawls it and recognises that it's a different language version. So if you just take your existing site and create some new pages and chuck them in Spanish, Google won't rank it won't treat it as a separate Spanish version. So you have to do things like generate the site, the right URL structures, have separate site maps, all sorts of things, which we deal with. But yeah, Shadow will generate all of your search engine friendly URLs for you, and you can change those. Again, you're talking sort of bigger clients who have lots of content who want to change their URL formats and friendly URLs and things. And then if you go back to here, refresh it. So we only set up the Europe server farm last week, but we've got about, I think, 60 or 70 virtual server cluster now in the US and 5 or 6 servers in Europe at the moment. But the good thing is, and this is where the cloud, the elastic nature of the cloud becomes great, is that you couldn't pull this off if you weren't on cloud computing. You couldn't do it. It cost you too much money. So what we can do is you can cluster 6 or 7 servers together